In this video, I'm going to show you how to remove a nail flush with a wood surface. Now there are two main ways to do this, so make sure you stick around and watch the full video to see both methods. So the first thing we need to do is sink a pin in and make sure it's flush with the surface of the wood. We've just got some plywood here, which is fine to test it on. Knock our nail in there. We'll do this 2 times and you can pick which method you prefer. So as you can see, we've got the wood there and that nail is perfectly flush. We're going to struggle to get anything onto the end of that. And this is where a little special tool I like to use called a tack remover comes into its own. We'll pop a list of tools in the description so you can use some if you've not got them already. But this I came across a few years ago. I always carry one in my toolbox. You can buy them in various different sizes. They sometimes come in sets, but I find that heavy duty ones are best for removing nails, and some of the lighter duty ones are obviously more practical for removing tacks. So the first way to remove it, which I think is the worst way, is to actually try and remove the nail from the top. So if we're trying to remove the nail from the top, we're obviously going to run the risk of creating some damage, but we need to get something underneath that nail head in order to lever it up. Now I always like to carry a sacrificial piece of plywood. This is 1/4 inch plywood. If it's nice and thin, it's probably better because it's easy to slip under your tool. And we're actually going to prise off this with all the prizing to pull this nail out so we don't damage the face side of our wood or our plywood. So we're going to take a hammer, but before we strike anything with a hammer, we're going to make sure we're wearing some safety goggles. Ear defenders are optional, it shouldn't make too much noise doing this operation, but always wear a pair of goggles whenever you're trying to extract nails from something. If the nail flicks up and hits you in the eye, I don't want you coming back and blaming me. So take our tack lifters and we're just going to try and tap it with a little hammer and get it just behind the back of the nail. So we're trying to get in there, trying to get it under, tap downwards a little bit. You're just trying to get under there with your tack lifter. And as you can see, we're about underneath the head there. And then all we're trying to do, we're not trying to remove the nail completely, we're just trying to lift it out the surface. As you can see, you always run the risk of creating some damage when you do this. This is always the risk whenever you try and remove nails through the face. You always run the risk of damaging the wood. So we'll show you the second way, which avoids all this damage to the face of your material if you're trying to keep it. If you're just trying to denail it and you're going to dispose of it, it doesn't matter. This is probably the quickest way. Now we've got our nail head exposed, we can use a bar or a hammer. Literally get your bar under there. Again, this is where your piece of plywood comes in useful again. If you're trying to do it with minimal damage, just prise that up. You've got a V in here. You want to try and get the nail as far into that V as possible to give you the most amount of grab on the nail. You can also use a hammer, but again, this plywood's fairly versatile. You can use it for anything. It just protects the surface. When I use a hammer, I like to understand the physics, so I like to keep one thumb there, just pushing the weight of the claw there. What you don't want to happen is slip up and move. You want to keep your thumb just on the front of the hammer there, your hand at the top, slowly lever backwards and remove your nail. Now I'm going to show you the way I like to do it if I'm trying to cause a minimal amount of damage to a piece of plywood or to a piece of finishing trim when I'm removing a nail. So we'll knock this nail back in flush with the surface again. Again, we'll pop a list of tools in the description. I picked these up recently and these are just a set of punches. The brilliant thing about these is they've got a long thin end. These are actually quite tricky to find. I had to search the internet for a while. They've got a long thin end and it means that you can select the right punch, which is just the size of the nail head or a little bit smaller, and then you can punch your nail in. Now to make this as easy as possible to remove the nail completely, I don't punch my nail straight through a piece of plywood or a piece of wood. I leave it sticking out a little bit so I can get my claw hammer and after. So sometimes if you're being really accurate, you can mark on your punch the depth you want to punch your nail in. So then we punched our nail in. As you can see, we've not created any damage to the top of the plywood. That nail was flush, now it's in there. Normally when you're removing trim, there's always somewhere you can gain access. So I always like to get a bar or something in as close as I can to where the nail is. This is a flat knife. You can also use an old chisel, and you just want to tap that in right where the fixing is. And once you've got that joint opened a little bit, you can then go in with your flat bar and you can lift out your piece of plywood. So you've created 0 damage to the face, whereas pulling it out back the way it came in created a lot of damage. No damage to the face because our nail has literally gone right through and only created damage to the back of the wood. And then because we didn't punch this nail all the way in, we're left with that there, and we can easily get our claw hammer on, use our sacrificial piece of scrap so we don't damage the surface, although this has been peppered, and then remove our nail. So if you've learned something from this video, please drop us a like, it helps support the channel. If you too have some other methods to remove nails as pain-free as possible, let us know in the comments. And if you want to keep yourself updated with more DIY tips and tricks, then feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.